My name's Yalda Hakim. I'm the presenter of Impact and a correspondent for Our World on BBC World News. What an extraordinary news year 2016 has been, whether it's been the rise of populist leaders like Donald Trump, the extraordinary election we had in the United States, or whether it's been the ongoing conflicts in the Middle East, whether it's been Syria or Iraq, or the humanitarian crisis that we've seen in Yemen. It hasn't felt like we've had a news year like this one. What I'd really like to do in 2017 is to be able to speak to someone like the president of the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte, who has this war on drugs. More than 6,000 people have now been killed in his country. And I'd like to understand why he has this policy and why he says the controversial things that he does.
I suppose when I look back at 2016 and the most memorable trips I've done, I think the one that stands out in a way is to the southern states of America. We went from New Orleans on one coastline to LA on the other. But it was the stop-off in Texas, and particularly in the south of Texas, in San Antonio, which is America's seventh biggest city now, where the Mexicans there, or the American Mexicans, because they were Hispanic and they're second or third generation Mexicans, were worried about their future. The idea of a wall had just come up. And they were saying, well, look, we're worried. We don't want to be deported. We feel as American as anybody else. And it's interesting how that story obviously then evolved, because we had Donald Trump, the man who suggested that idea, coming into the presidency. So we'll see what happens with that next year. Now, in terms of places that I recommend people go to next year, I think some of the same ones that have been mentioned in the last year or two are still worth looking at. I'm talking about Cuba, which is obviously going through interesting change, and with the new American president, we'll see what happens there. But my suggestion is go there quickly. Mongolia is a very interesting part of the world, and if you really want to rough it a little bit and see what life is like in the kind of deserts, particularly the Gobi Desert, then do that. People are talking about Iran, and the other one is Colombia, which after the peace process is going to become much more accessible. Places like the Rainbow River are now able to be visited, and again, because of that, I would say go there.
Hello, I'm Karishma Viswani, and I'm the BBC's Asia business correspondent based in Singapore. It would be fair to say that 2016 was a very interesting year, and the standout moments in terms of news coverage for me were Brexit. It took a lot of people in Asia by surprise. Investors were not expecting the UK to vote to leave the European Union. And of course, the Trump presidency. A lot of Asian countries had privately hoped that Hillary Clinton would be the next US president. That didn't happen. And now in 2017, everyone's waiting to see what kind of relationship Mr. Trump will have with China, the world's second largest economy. Already we've seen a bit of friction, a bit of tension between Mr. Trump and China. He's promised to call China out as a currency manipulator on the first day that he takes office. We're waiting to see if that actually happens. For China, domestically, a key political meeting that will have major ramifications for the domestic population and, of course, how it manages the continual slowdown of its economy.
I think there are a couple of areas of technology that are really big right now and will continue to grow in 2017. Artificial intelligence is one of them. You can't see it happening, but AI is starting slowly to take over the world. People in certain jobs are going to have a problem because artificial intelligence is getting quietly smarter and it's able to do more and more. Also, everyone's been banging on about virtual reality. I think augmented reality is coming. This is where you put on some glasses and you see the world around you, the real world around you, but there's extra information or extra graphics floating in space around certain objects. There's been real developments in the technology behind that. I am just waiting for a killer app to make that go global.
Hi, my name is Peter Okwoche. I'm presenter of Focus on Africa on BBC World News. 2016 was memorable for me for the Olympics in Rio, Brazil. A lot of outstanding African performances there. Of course, they had the perennial problems of African athletes not being paid and some countries not being prepared, but some athletes really shone. There were also some big elections on the continent. We saw the Gambian president, who's been in power for 22 years, lose his seat to an almost a relatively unknown candidate. For 2017, I'm really looking forward to the Nations Cup in Gabon. Africa loves football. It's the biggest continental tournament in the sport, so I'm really looking forward to that. And I'll be watching events in South Africa very closely because it seems as if the South African President Jacob Zuma can't shake off the criticism, not only from the opposition, but his party as well. So that's my 2017. Thank you.
Well, if you'll forgive me for stating the obvious, in many ways 2016 was defined by two huge electoral shocks, Brexit and Donald Trump's victory. And as we look into 2017, I guess we're looking at four other elections which could, and I'm only saying could, offer some surprises as well. In March, we have the Dutch general election. A couple of months later, the French presidential election. Go into the autumn, and you have Angela Merkel seeking a fourth term in the German elections. And we also know at some point, Italy has to have a general election as well. And all four of those elections have the potential to impact not just the nature of Brexit, but also our understanding of Western politics. So really, we're going to be focused very hard on how all of those go. And of course, we'll be covering them on BBC World News.